Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to week 6 of INTAG 100. So this starts Monday, February 22nd, today. Sorry, sometimes I record the videos a couple days earlier and post it a little bit earlier. So today we're starting week 6, and this week you have 3 main things going on. First, we'll start with Module 9, Agriculture and the Environment. Then we'll go on to Module 10, Agriculture and Climate Change. And then we'll get into the International Agriculture discussion, number 2. Thank you to everybody who completed and provided feedback on that mid-semester or kind of first month semester check-in. I really appreciate it. One of the ideas that came out of this, and I want to address that now, is just having a little bit more clarity of things to focus on for each of the modules. So one thing I want to do is just kind of take you back so you can see, hey, where have we come from? Because we've just had our first exam, working on grading that. We'll hopefully have that to you as soon as possible. But just a real quick reminder, we did the introductory modules. We talked about international agriculture, what we should understand from the past, why should we care about international agriculture, looking at food security, comparing US and international food systems. Then we got into the economic module, so different models of development. How development has been seen over time, what population has to do with agriculture, and then also looking at the global land grab, biofuels, and then trade, this role of trade and the value chain. So those were all the economic modules. So we're done with that. We're moving on to now the second of our 5 main themes from the course, looking at natural resource modules. So you have first Module 9, Agriculture and the Environment, and then Module 10, Agriculture and Climate Change. And one piece of feedback that came back from folks was, hey, can we have a little bit more clarity on what we should really be focusing on for each of the modules? So this is the overview page. So Module 9 kind of gives you a little bit of a description here of what's happening, what we'll be looking at. And then there's a question here to look at, right? This is all things you're familiar with. And then I just wanted to point out the learning objectives. So when people are wondering, well, what are the things we should really be focusing on? These are the main things that I really want you to look at and to have sort of as a takeaway from this module. So to compare and contrast the 2 main paradigms of natural resource management / environmental conservation and how they relate to agriculture and development on a global scale, differentiate between sustainable development and sustainable agriculture, and recognize how Brazil is making sustainable agriculture development a reality. So that's from Module 9. If we switch over to Module 10, same sort of thing, looking at this role of climate change and to be able to address past and current trends of global climate change, or the nature of past and current global climate change, trends in global climate change, examples of how global climate change is impacting agriculture around the world, explain the difference between adaptation and mitigation of climate change, and articulate strategies for farmers and households to respond to global climate change. And then again, you have your readings here. Or in this case, there's a couple of videos. So taking a look at this, I know some people wanted some more videos, and so we're able to incorporate some videos for this. So that's really the main big themes and takeaways for each of these modules. So for Module 9, what should you really know? You should be able to look at kind of this relationship between agriculture and the environment surrounding it. The agriculture is utterly dependent upon the surrounding environment. And those there's positive relationships and also challenging relationships when we start talking about land use. We start talking about deforestation. And then to be able to look at sustainable development, broadly speaking, when we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about something that is environmentally, socially, and economically sustainable. So it's able to go on for generations. Basically, you're able to have benefits today without paying the price down the line. So we can have environmental, social, and economic benefits. And so we can look at lots of different aspects of sustainable development, right? Education, healthcare, or global health. We could talk about human rights, all of the sustainable development goals. If you remember that's sort of the broad net for addressing sustainable development. And then sustainable agriculture is one subsector within that. So what are things related to sustainable agriculture? Well, what are agricultural practices that will help develop or prolong or promote healthy development environmentally, socially, and economically? So there's some specific sorts of sustainable agricultural practices. but these are not exclusive to any sorts of, it's pretty broad in terms of what can be included within sustainable agriculture. Conservation agriculture is one component of sustainable agriculture. Again, we're getting into smaller and smaller concentric circles, but conservation agriculture has much more specific parameters for what is included or is not. So just think of sustainable development as a big circle, sustainable agriculture within that as one aspect. Again, related to health, education, all sorts of different aspects. And then conservation agriculture is one kind of sustainable agriculture. And then we'll look at a case study about Brazil. And truthfully, there's been some changes in leadership within Brazil, and not all of these things are as true as they would have been earlier. And so there's probably some updates that need to happen to this case study, but kind of gives you a bit of an idea of what's happening in the past and in addressing sustainable agricultural practices. So then looking at climate change, one, being aware with, what is the scientific argument for climate change? And there's lots of things we can talk about or look at, is increasing CO2 levels, looking at ice cores. And as you drill down, you can observe the levels of carbon dioxide, sort of like reading the rings on a tree. And you can identify each year and the levels of carbon dioxide and increases in that. And we know carbon dioxide is essential for us to not freeze, but with higher and higher levels, it impacts the temperatures. So what does that mean for agriculture? Well, it impacts temperatures, but it also impacts precipitation. And that's incredibly important for agriculture. And the people who are most vulnerable are going to be people who are already in warm climates, in tropical climates. And typically those are people who already have less resources compared to folks further north in, for example, Europe or North America. And so something like, oh, well, hey, a drought happens. That's going to have a much more significant impact on farmers in a tropical climate if they don't have access to irrigation systems to be able to water their crops. So the people who are already the most vulnerable are the ones who will experience the most significant impacts from this. So there's two ways to address this: adaptation and mitigation. Adaptation, you adapt. Hey, the climate is changing. How do I change what I'm doing? Mitigate, how do you mitigate the consequences of this? We do not want the climate to be changing anymore. So what are things that we can start doing? So adaptation would be, hey, it's warmer today. I'm going to wear different clothes. Mitigation would be, I want to reduce the impacts of this. So I'm going to walk or ride my bike instead of driving my car, right? That's on a small sort of individual scale. What does that look like for agriculture, for farmers? So that's what we're going to be looking at. And then there's going to be the discussion board. So that's this week. I hope you have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.